Hi and welcome to Muted Healing, a space where you can mute all the external noises that take you away from a sense of who you are at your core. This travel section of this channel is slightly different from all the other channels that are out there because while they may have tips and budgets and best ways to cut costs and things to see, we're going to cover a bit more of a reflective journal throughout, using the help of my actual travel journal, using the help of some questions that I've been asked on Instagram, Lifetime while I was actually traveling. And without further ado, let's start with my first stop of this grand backpacking tour that I did for 1 month around India, where I started in Kashmir. So I travelled from London Heathrow on December the 13th, 2022. Really cold, of course, here in Britain. And I had a layover in Abu Dhabi where I visited a friend of mine. We just stayed over the night at his because there was a layover and we went for breakfast. So that's always quite useful. If ever you do have a long haul flight on your travels, try to look for a layover where you can perhaps see another country as well if you are confident enough to do so. There's not much to see in Abu Dhabi, and to be fair, I didn't actually venture out. I just wanted to see my friend and catch up. So once you arrive in Delhi, there's a few admin things that you need to do, such as the immigration queues were hella long. And I have no idea if that was because of the G20 summit that was happening at the time, or if it's just the case for non-resident Indians or just anyone who's actually not Indian when they're coming into the country. Security levels are quite high, and that's probably why the immigration queues were so long. But the most important thing that you do need to do is to get a local SIM card. Now, when I was researching this before I left, for some reason, the blogs, the people that I spoke to, all made it out as if it was quite hard to do. Apparently you'd need various forms of ID, you'd need a benefactor or a counter signature from somebody who lives in India, but that's not the case at all. There is literally an Airtel, I believe it was, the service provider that I had. There's a kiosk that is directly outside when you leave arrivals. You've collected your luggage, etc., and they will hook you up with a local SIM card. So I got one for 28 days, which gives you enough data, local calls, texts. It was just 2 days short of the entire time that I had, and according to my receipt, I actually can't read if it was 450 rupees or 950 rupees. So if you know, can you just let me know by writing it in the comments below? But that SIM card sorted me out-ish, which you'll find out in a little while why the big ish was there. Anyway, I got speaking to this German guy who was getting a SIM card at the same time as me. He was also traveling, and while we were getting our SIMs activated, we just kind of got talking with each other and decided that we'd share a cab to our destination. Now, the useful thing to do here is crack open the Uber app, especially if this is the first time you're in the country. You want to get an idea of times, where you're going, and also just rough prices, because the minute you exit the airport here or anywhere, I'm sure you are going to get hounded by local taxi companies and drivers, and they will hike their prices up. So if you have the Uber, you have the choice obviously to know, all right, I want to give the local economy my money, but I know that the going rate is roughly this amount as compared with Uber, which was about 600 rupees I felt to get to my hostel. It was late, we had just landed in the country, so we did opt for actually sticking with the Uber, because probably a good thing, because the guy who was hassling us to give us a ride was very drunk. Delhi is where I am right now. I'm looking to go to Kashmir tomorrow, probably by plane, most likely by plane. Day 2, go to Srinagar in Jammu Kashmir. Important. The thing that I said about was the ish factor about my SIM card was that they don't tell you that in Kashmir only one type of SIM works. Apparently they don't always work in every province. And it just so happens that my SIM card isn't working in Srinagar. So obviously, as a foreigner, I'm not getting into a contract, or what we call a contract here in the UK. It's not like a pay monthly SIM, if you like. I got the equivalent of a pay-as-you-go SIM. Now, those don't work in Kashmir. Again, possibly for security reasons. Only the monthly contract type SIM works in Kashmir. So sadly, I wasn't told any of that. The kindness of strangers, Allah never leaves anyone. I managed to borrow somebody's phone, called the person who was meant to pick me up. So naturally, I'm freaking out when I land in Srinagar. But just know that is the big factor. Prepaid is the SIM that most travelers are given. It's kind of like that pay-as-you-go service. Postpaid is kind of like that contract. And that's the only one that works. It's super cold, but this is what my houseboat looks like from the outside. So serene and peaceful, and yet it's kind of like its own little community and ecosystem. Houseboats, according to my guides, have remained an integral part of the ecosystem of Dal Lake ever since the British were around during colonial times. They were built and introduced in the late 19th century, Kashmiri architects displaying their exquisite art of craftsmanship, which you can see on wall paneling, you can see in the walnut wood. It's become a bit of a tourist attraction both for domestic tourists as well as international ones. There's now roughly about 900 houseboats just on Dal Lake in itself, and they are kind of arranged randomly without proper spacing. Now the issue with Dal Lake and these houseboats is that there is not a proper sewage system, which unfortunately means that some of that sewage is now being regurgitated back into the lake, meaning that it's probably not the most probably not the most cleanest lake. The mountain that I zoom in on, that's a temple that was really close to our houseboat. So it was really interesting that dawn and dusk every night I could hear the Hindu bhajans going on and the prayers. And then 5 times a day you could also hear the adhan going off in a different direction, which is classic India, right? And here I am sitting on the steps of my houseboat, listening to the sounds of the water and distant city noises, the honking, the shouts, and I think the occasional birds too. Dal Lake is beautiful. There's a haze in the air, and boy oh boy it's cold. Double socks, 4 layers, and I'm still shivering. But I haven't seen anything yet. Hilal Bhai, who picked me up from the airport, was so friendly and welcoming, and obviously they're going to try and sell me the touristy packages. But when I sit with him tonight, I'm going to ask for the raw Kashmiri culture, like the raw kahwa they gave me when I arrived. I've asked for traditional Kashmiri food too, and I'll report back on what that's like. Anyway, it's coming up to Maghrib time and I have a reflection. Recently, I've been feeling like it might be a bit greedy to desire to see the entire world, coupled with feeling lonely or getting bored on my trips. But today I remembered that instead of feeling guilty, I should lean into the gratitude. 15 years ago, I could only have dreamed of doing such things, and here I am living out my prayers. And what's more, I have the eyes of my ex-students and younger siblings on me. Breaking the monotony like this means I'm truly relying on God to pull me through, and He does, always. This morning, over a simple bread omelette and masala chai, I was deeping that never would I have ever thought that my sustenance would be in India. There is so much to reflect and be grateful for, and travel helps. And now, as I sit on the lake, waiting for my evening sustenance, shivering, I'm feeling so cold here, and it's not even in the minuses. It's like 8 degrees. Here I am sitting in my sweater. I've got 2 layers of socks on. I've got 4 layers on the top. And best believe I'm not taking any of them off to go to sleep tonight. I'll be putting them on. I don't know why I'm laughing. I was shivering earlier and ended up falling asleep. Maghrib Adhan has gone off. Let's see what the night brings. Update, the kebab, curry and veg was A1. The night wasn't too cold either. I insulated myself in the blanket and ended up shedding layers. For breakfast, I had bread omelette, masala bread omelette and coffee. For snack, I had tea and tandoori roti. That was with Hilal Bhai at his mother's house actually. I had a late lunch, which was veg maggi and masala chai with ginger. First time for me that I've had, yes, this is true. This is the first time I had ginger in my masala chai, and honestly a game changer because I had it every day in India since then. And then for dinner, veg curry, dal and chicken rogan. I don't know why I shared that with you or wrote it in my diary, but actually I'm glad I did because it's bringing back some of those flavors. Anyway, so I've just had a shower, alhamdulillah, for hot water, and either it's not as cold here or I've climatized, but I'm not feeling as cold as yesterday. It probably helped that I was out all day with driver Hilal Bhai. He took me to the local Srinagar places. Pari Mahal, meaning the Palace of Fairies, Chashma Shahi Gardens, Nishad, Shalimar, Hazrat Bal Dargah for Jummah, Hari Parbat Fort, Dargah of the person who brought Islam to Kashmir, Jamia Masjid for Asr, and now I'm back resting at home. Most of the gardens had a 25 rupee fee for entrance, except the fort, which was 100 rupees. I'll need to take more cash out tomorrow. Here are some of the tickets. Now, instead of me talking so much about all these different gardens and places that I saw on the first day, or rather the first full day, my second day in Kashmir, I figured I'd actually just read out some of the questions given by some viewers who were there kind of following my journey with me on Instagram as I went through. So number one, was there a system or plan that you came in with in terms of seeing specific things? Not really. For India in general, I just had the specific cities in mind, but what I was going to see in each of those cities wasn't totally planned. I had some idea, but you do your research based on how much time you have, how much money you have, what the weather's like, Google Maps, reviews, and mostly what I did was think about things that interested me and then worked out a logistical way of seeing them. So for example, if my hostel is here, I would visit at the very first, the furthest destination and then work my way back so that at the end of the day when you're tired, you can just short trip back to your hostel, right? And that's what I mean by logistics. But again, you have to work out things like opening hours and again, time and money and so on. I think the important thing here to remember is you can't fit everything into one trip. Hell, you can't fit the entire world into one life, and that's okay. I just wanted to make the most using the resources that I had. Question 2, how did you navigate others' views of your experiences? Okay, so I know where this one comes from. Whenever you're doing like any kind of project or something big for yourself, you have a lot of opinions that come your way. Most of them unwanted, sadly. You should have gone at this time. You should have visited this. You should have done this. You should have tasted that. And there's a lot of should haves and should haves and should haves. But quite frankly, it's boring and patronizing because trust me, if you know me at all, you know I've done my due diligence. I've asked around. I've done my research. People are very quick to advise, but they forget that everyone's situation is different according to their time that they have, according to the money that they have. And this is why my best advice in this situation is to do you. Do what is best for you and your time, your budget, your money, because you're the one that's on that trip. My biggest game changer, if there's nothing that you take away from this trip, it's this. Their opinions does not have to be your experience. Did Kashmir live up to your expectations, and how did you navigate those feelings that came up? So you've seen the pictures from the second day. I'll be honest, it didn't live up to my expectations, sadly. And that's got nothing to do with the place or the people or anything like that. It's just because I went in the off season. And again, that's on me because of the time and the money that I had. More so the time. I couldn't get work off later on in the year. And if not now, then when? So it was one of those kind of once in a lifetime times to be able to go. I had to take it. Nothing was in bloom, as you've said, and we've always heard about Kashmir being like heaven, and yet none of the gardens really were beautifully blooming. They were dry, barren land for the most part. Fountains were switched off, so none of the water features were even that nice. But I knew that I had to make the most of the time that I had there, so I just had to get out there and find my feet, and that's okay, because the next day more than made up for it. The saving grace was Pahalgam, so without further ado, let's go. I was given the choice of whether to go to Sonmarg or Pahalgam, and there was one other I can't actually remember, but I chose Pahalgam because apparently Sonmarg is a popular tourist and skiing destination at this time of the year, so it was going to be really busy. But to be honest, to be fair, you never really know what you're in for, and when you Google stuff, it all starts to look the same. So you kind of just have to close your eyes, take a stab in the dark, and Bismillah and vibes it. And I absolutely did not regret it. Pahalgam was truly beautiful. I paid 4,000 Indian rupees in the end after Hilal Bhai haggled, which is a lot less than what I heard on YouTube. So I'll come back to this reflection later. But I felt like it could have been a little bit cheaper even from the 4,000 that I paid. My pony or horse was called Sultan and my guide was called Yusuf Bhai. In the end, I tipped him 200 rupees and he looked happy. Sultan was absolutely gorgeous and so were the views. Mini Switzerland especially. And the reason why it's called Mini Switzerland is because those mountains give off the vibe that it's like the Alps. The whole ride was so peaceful. Just me and the click-clacking of Sultan's hooves. On occasion, you'll see another horse that either overtakes or is coming back down the opposite way, but it was phenomenal to be able to spend the entire day with no signal, because bear in mind my SIM card is not working at this time, so because I'm out now I don't have the Wi-Fi, and I'm just left in the trust of this guide and this horse up on these mountains who just know what they're doing. And honestly, this in itself was so healing. Hilal Bhai fed me roadside Kashmiri kahwa on the way back, which was laced with so many nuts, almonds, walnuts, cashews, and probably more. It was quite sweet, but it was an experience as well, actually, just to pull up on the roadside and experience that beautiful kahwa after a long day of pony riding up the Swiss Alps, or mini Switzerland as they say. On the last day, I took a boat ride around Dal Lake before heading off to the airport to my next destination, Amritsar. So here's some beautiful B-roll of the lake while I wrap up with some final reflections and lessons from Kashmir that I carried with me for the rest of the trip, and I recommend you do as well. Remember, the first part of this trip is the thing that's going to set you up and teach you the lessons. Number 1, don't feel guilty about saying no or haggling, because while it may feel odd to do so, I suggest you check your intentions. There's plenty of ways to support the local economy. I didn't haggle with my host for that guided tour, and I kind of wish I did, even a little bit, because I could then feel less bad about not giving elsewhere. Remember, this is a whole economy here. People know each other and they're trying to support each other's businesses as well. So if I had just haggled a little bit there, I probably would have spent a little bit more money elsewhere. Number 2, the street animals here are dogs, which is very alien to us in the UK because street animals here are cats. Now these dogs are very cute. They have these scary looking yellowish eyes, but generally they keep themselves to themselves. Or say hello to my kutta friend. Number 3, capitalist attitudes are prevalent here too. Now, marketing is important, selling is the livelihood, but it's my own weakness that finds it uncomfortable or finds it like capitalism. But it is livelihood and a leftover from colonialism, if you like, but I don't know. There's this attitude, especially amongst non-resident Indians or foreigners, that we're always going to get scammed and they'll be able to tell a mile off that we're a foreigner. But if you're worried about that, then just get comfortable with bartering, because it's totally okay to haggle and it is expected for you to haggle. Now finally, let's wrap it up by talking costs. And remember, all of these are subject to inflation, seasons, and of course your haggling power and how much comfortability you have in terms of your finances. I'll be the first to say that I was pretty weak at this stage of my trip, but I definitely did get better as I went along. Wait until Goa, where I became a full-on, can I talk to the manager kind of guy. Anyway, it's all on the screen here, so take a screenshot if you want, and I'll see you on the next video. The next destination, Amritsar.